Hello and welcome to this episode of Talking Point, a series which covers topics related to immigration, multiculturalism, diversity, and inclusion. I'm your host, Darrell Pinto. Talking Point is brought to you by New Canadians TV. New Canadians is an information network for newcomers and would-be immigrants to Canada. You can visit their website at newcanadians.tv or their YouTube channel, where this session is currently being live streamed. I'm really happy today to welcome our expert panelists, Zenia Wadwani, Director of Social Policy Analysis and Research at the City of Toronto, Angelique Reddy-Kalala, Immigration Strategy Officer at the City of Moncton, Ross Anderson, the Head of Social Impact, Public Policy and Sustainability at Starbucks, and Joshua Murray, Front Office Manager at the Hyatt Place, Moncton. Today's episode is a special one for me because it represents a convergence of several hats that I've worn. I was previously co-chair of the Refugee Jobs Agenda Roundtable with the Honorable Senator Ratna Omidvar. She has and continues to be a powerful voice in our government on behalf of refugees. And although she's unable to join us today, she did provide a recorded video message, which we will play now.
Hello, everyone. I think we all think of refugees in a certain way in terms of their need for safety and security, the reasons for why they fled their countries, their need for housing. But we tend to forget that refugees are, after all, human beings with human capital. They bring education, they bring experience, they bring talent, and mostly they bring a burning desire and a determination to succeed. So the Refugee Jobs Agenda Roundtable, its purpose is to focus on the practical efforts our communities can make to bridge the divide between refugee talent and the labor market. Since 2015, when we were founded, we have grown to 167 members from across the country, and the members include, of course, settlement agencies, but they also include a growing list of national and local employers. In fact, the hiring event that we are going to be talking about was developed by Starbucks Canada and adapted to a refugee community. And we are now in the process of hosting these single-day, multi-agency, multi-employer hiring events where employers can come face-to-face with refugee talent and can make on-the-spot decisions for job offers, etc. So it's a win-win-win. Our success rate speaks for itself. 70% of the refugees at our first hiring event were offered employment in Toronto, 85% in Greater Moncton, and we hope to repeat the success rate as we gallop across the country. Good luck and thank you.
I appreciate the Senator taking time to record that message, and she's teed this discussion up perfectly. So I'm going to get each of the panelists to introduce yourselves. If you could tell us a little bit about what you do and how you first heard about this refugee hiring event. And Ross, I'm going to get you to start because you were there at the genesis of this pilot back then. It's now turned out to be a great roadshow. Maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Darrell. My name's Ross Anderson. I head up social impact along with some other responsibilities at Starbucks. And when we talk about social impact at Starbucks, in addition to Starbucks Foundation grants in communities across Canada, we look to create programs that are roughly 1,500 stores across Canada and 23,000 employees can participate in to make a difference in their community. And one of those programs was a refugee hiring program we launched in 2017. When we made a public commitment to hire 1,000 refugees over the next 5 years, which we met that goal. But in trying to hire 1,000 refugees, we knew we had to do it systematically. And we had to have an approach that we could use in communities across Canada. So we worked with settlement agencies, primarily with access employment in the early days here in Toronto, to create a hiring model where we set aside our typical hiring practices and focused exclusively on how we could reach refugees, tailor the process to meet their needs, and get them hired. And we had such success with that approach that it led us to reach out to other employers at the roundtable that, Darrell, you were co-chair of. And with their help and organization, we put in place that very first hiring event.
Thank you, Ross. Angelique, can I get you to go next from the beautiful city of Moncton?
Sure. Yes. So Angelique Reddy-Kalala. I work with the City of Moncton Economic Development, specifically in immigration. We're currently in our second immigration strategy. So, and it's really a wide variety of partners that work collaboratively to help put in place that immigration strategy. And the City of Moncton, in partnership with Working NB, has been hosting job fairs, employment fairs in our region for close to 7 years now. We filled over 600 positions, but we do recognize that there's additional barriers, of course, for refugees and asylum seekers, for instance, and anyone really facing additional employment barriers. And we're in the process of actually working on an employer playbook with Wes and heard about this refugee hiring event model in Toronto. And as soon as we heard about that model, we wanted to try it out in our region, recognizing that the employment fairs work for high-skilled immigrants, of course. It's one tool in our toolbox. There's many other things we need to put in place, but we're always looking for new pilots and new opportunities to help connect newcomers and international students to the labor market. So we were really excited about this opportunity to host one in our region and to work with partners from across Canada like Wes and Jumpstart Refugee Talent.
Thank you, Angelique. And I will acknowledge that you were the muscle that moved the entire city of Moncton to make this a success. 85% success rate out of the outcomes. That was amazing. Before I let Xenia introduce herself, I want to remind the audience, first of all, thank you for joining us. And I want to remind you that this is an interactive event. So I encourage you to type your questions via either the Q&A tab on Zoom or the live chat box if you're watching on YouTube. You can also like any question that's submitted by someone else so that a more likes an audience question gets, it'll get pushed to the top of my screen and I'm more likely to ask the question of the audience, to the panelists rather. Okay, Xenia, over to you.
Good evening. Thank you. So as you mentioned off the top, I'm the Director of Social Policy Analysis and Research with the Social Development Finance and Administration Division at the City of Toronto. That's a really long title. All to say is that I have the privilege of leading a multidisciplinary team of policy, research, and community development professionals in developing and implementing social policy and that drives transformative change in Toronto across many areas, including poverty reduction, community benefits, monitoring and evaluation, and equity and reconciliation. So the City of Toronto's newcomer office is based in our division and is an internal center. I'm not sure why my camera went off. Apologies. Technical difficulties. There we go. It's based in our division and is an internal center of expertise on newcomer and immigration issues. That office is responsible for advancing the City of Toronto strategies related to newcomers, refugees, and undocumented Torontonians, including the Toronto Newcomer Strategy, access to city services for undocumented Torontonians, and the Refugee Capacity Plan. The City of Toronto, through this office, has been a partner of the Refugee Jobs Agenda Roundtable since its inception, and the city was a member of the planning committee for the first refugee hiring event that was held in 2019, and the second one that was held in 2022. The city supports this event by providing the venue and supporting logistics, facilitating connections to city divisions, event promotion, and facilitating the attendance of the mayor and city councillors. And we continue to be an active member of the planning committee and look forward to this event this year, which is being held on October 20th at Metro Hall.
We definitely will talk more about that upcoming event on October 20th. Thank you, Xenia. Joshua.
Hi, yeah, my name is Joshua. I'm the front office manager of the Hyatt Place Moncton. I manage a team of about 10, 15 people from all, different walks of life. We actually held the Moncton hiring event at our hotel, and I got the opportunity to sit in on it at the table with our ownership company, and that was a really great experience to get to see how that worked.
Welcome, Joshua. And thank you. I understand you are joining us on your weeks off on vacation, so I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Joshua, I'm going to stay with you on this next question. So have you ever participated in a regular kind of job fair or a career fair before? And how would you compare that experience with this specific refugee hiring event over the summer in Moncton?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have held other job fairs and hiring events at the hotel, and a lot of the time I do sit in on one of those, get to meet with a lot of great candidates. I would say it differs in kind of the amount of support that each candidate will get. So, sometimes when there's a language barrier or there's stuff like that, you'll have somebody that's working with them come in, and it boosts their confidence and it makes them more able to express their abilities and their qualifications for whatever position that they're interested in.
So from the employer side of the table, Joshua, was that a better, equal to experience than what you experienced before with the job fairs?
Absolutely. And you kind of have to, kind of gauge it based on who it is that is, applying. But I saw it as a positive in this case, because there is a lot of great talent. There was a lot of great talent at the event. But I'm not sure if they would have been able to express that properly without that support they got.
Right. Angelique, you've been masterminded you said over 6 years, many career fairs, job fairs. Your vantage point, what's different with the refugee hiring event model?
Yeah, so this was a different type of model compared to what we normally do. And one of the things that we noticed is a lot of individuals didn't already have, for instance, a resume created. So that was one of the big kind of secondary outcomes to this hiring event, was that everyone, regardless of whether or not they actually got selected for an interview, had a resume that was created by one of our partners, either at Working NB, IRCC, or Magma, which were some key partners. So that was a big, I think, plus for a lot of the candidates. Also, similar to what Joshua had said as well, a lot of the individuals that attended the events, really their biggest barrier was language. And I believe we had over 10 interpreters from a wide variety of different languages. And if any candidates had any challenges around communication, they were matched with an interpreter. So several of those individuals also got hired, and we do recognize a lot of people learn fast on the job when it comes to a second language or a third or fourth language, but sometimes just need that first employment opportunity in Canada. And this venue was a great opportunity, a great tool in our toolbox to be able to help match some of those individuals that might really struggle in integrating the labor market. So that was definitely a big win as well. And then also the employer preparation sessions that were done prior. The employers were all briefed on what to expect, certainly around the language barriers that might be present. All of the newcomers as well also received counseling as well, employment counseling prior to the session. So both the employer and the candidate were both prepared prior to the career fair, which was definitely, helped increase the success of those that were in attendance.
Angelique, you have a special vantage point, like a bird's eye view of multiple agencies when you run these career fairs or hiring events. What was your observations from the level of collaboration across multiple agencies, different levels, provincial, federal, non-province players like Jumpstart? How did you see that come together?
I thought it was a great experience, and it was all three levels of government working together. It was our settlement agencies, the Ukrainian Club. We have over 1,600 Ukrainians that have arrived since the invasion, and so many of the attendees were also those that had come from Ukraine, for instance. And so all those partners working together so closely over several weeks and months leading up to this event certainly helped increase our partnership, but also we made sure collectively that everyone that walked in the door was well supported. And you certainly saw that the day of the event in the coaches corner, because the candidates, rather than sitting and just waiting, there was circles set up. There's coaches going in and helping to provide extra support to the candidates to get them ready for the interview, and then after the interview for their next interview, for instance, if they had any nerves. So certainly that supportive environment. And those were some great partnerships that we have in our community. And I think a lot of people were just excited to be able to help, work with a lot of people that might have some additional barriers. So people were excited about the opportunity to partner. And we certainly have a great community when it comes to community partnerships, and some great also relationships with our local employers too. So all of those things kind of mixed together, I think, led to such high success rates of those that were hired at the career fair.
Fantastic. Xenia, you've, or the newcomer office at the City of Toronto's been part of 2, and we're going to make it 3 fairly soon. What's been things you've heard from them in terms of the difference between career fairs versus this type of model?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the same things or some similar things to what have already been said, but this, the event's unique in that it's very specific to individuals who have fled their home countries. It's not sort of open to all. So as they seek safety and welcome in our welcoming city, and it gives them an opportunity to be hired on the spot. I think that's unique with that coaching that was mentioned, conducted in advance. Refugees are supported through that screening process, as was mentioned, which we know can be pretty intimidating for anyone. Let alone a refugee who has newly arrived and maybe unfamiliar with the nuances of the Canadian labor market, or experiencing other barriers in terms of finding employment. It connects refugees directly to those employers, and the ones who have specifically directed and demonstrated their commitment to hiring refugees. So I think that's also unique. And in order to set them up for success, those registered participants have that access to employment preparation workshops, the on-site interview coaching, and not just the coaching, but coaching by qualified employment counselors. And they have scheduled interviews at the end of that event. It's not that they're going around just to pick up flyers and just to pick up information, but those successful candidates will either be provided with a job offer or a second interview. And that on-the-spot feedback, I think, is pretty unique as well to all of the candidates. But I think what stands out for me is that, refugees don't have to also worry about disclosing their immigration status as part of their application process. And I think that's a pretty big deal. This event is for refugees and is organized by a team of refugee-serving experts that recognize those unique needs, their incredible talent, the barriers that they might be facing in applying for jobs, and have created a very well thought out solution to sort of meet those needs.
Thank you, Xenia. The senator said something that you mirrored in your comment just now, and Angelique as well, and that is she's a very practical minded person. Everything is action oriented. And really that was part of the design of this model, was we wanted to be able to have a position where we could measure outcomes and have significant outcomes. And the City of Toronto has been an amazing partner in 2, going to be 3 soon. So thank you for that. Ross, you've been there from the very beginning. You were part of the design phase of this model. In the design phase, were you conscious about trying to change the career fair model to something more like what this is developed into?
Yeah, absolutely. We very deliberately chose to go down this route where we wanted to focus on the interview and start with the interview and then work backwards in terms of the candidate experience leading into the interview, and then their experience leaving the interview. Because that, in our sense, or our perspective, the employment journey can break down before and after. And so you can get really, really concrete results when you're focusing on the interview and the inputs and outputs out of it. So music to my ears, though, from Angelique, that she found the experience collaborative, because in thinking about doing interviews, the event model that we started at Starbucks, we knew that there was potential to collaborate with others, and we knew that we could all make a bigger impact together, and it be greater impact than we could achieve individually. And so when you've got employers, a large group of diverse employers coming together at one time to present employment opportunities to candidates, that's such a great attraction point of interest for the candidates, which benefits everybody. And then you've got concrete examples of individuals coming in on the day and getting a job, which is really, really fundamental to them individually, but they can then share and demonstrate that success to friends and family and in the community. And that demonstration effect, I think, is really powerful. That, going down this path isn't a promise of anything you're actually going to know, that you've got a job, or you're going to get really solid, concrete feedback on how to improve and come back for an interview in the future. So we're really, really happy to hear about the collaboration, but I think it was a deliberate process to focus on the interview that sort of directed us this way.
And the ripple effects continue each time we host one of these hiring events, Ross. The one that's coming up on October 20th at the City of Toronto is double in size from the last year. So it's the employers as well that are also sort of seeing the benefits of this beyond sort of the interview experience for the client themselves.
It's you can see that from the employer's perspective, that they can come into the hiring event, and do a series of interviews in a concentrated amount of time across a diverse pool of candidates that had been prepped. And these interviews are pre-scheduled so that they have they can be very efficient with the time of their HR folks. And they get results through this, as we've talked about, that they can't achieve really in any other way.
Okay, so I'm going to remind the audience again, if you have a question, just type it into the chat box. Ross, I'm going to stay with you on this, and you've been around for a few of these hiring events. Is there one, I'm sure there's many, but if you can just share one memorable moment from one of these events that stuck out in your mind?
Yeah, we've done our own Starbucks refugee hiring events, and in every single occurrence of these events, there's one of those moments, if not many. And they somewhat follow the same pattern, in that someone that was very, very nervous, not having had an interview before, coming in with a lot of hesitation and courage, and overcoming that, being awarded with an on-the-spot job offer, and then seeing the impact it has on that individual and how they carry that out of the event, and they're on their phone, sharing the news with their family, sharing it with their friends. It makes such a huge difference to them that you can't help but feel that energy. And within Starbucks, our store managers are throwing up their hands in order to participate in these events, because it's just so positive. It's such a great experience.
Wonderful. Has any of you heard anything from the newcomers office in terms of memorable moments from these events?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, even when I was there at the last one, it's really, it's those mini celebrations that happen. You can see sort of the interaction between the applicant and the employer, and there's a successful match, and you can both see sort of the joy in their faces. It's the refugee is like, oh my God, I can't believe I've just had this experience and I've just got this job, and how amazing is that? But also the equally so the employer, who is just I found someone. I found someone who's gonna work within our new place, who's a great fit, who has a great resume, who interviewed really well. And there's just that excitement on both sides, but that it's like a mini celebration that's happening all over the day, and you can see it in various places. And that's what you get when you bring in committed companies that believe in the talent that they're about to meet with, and the individuals who are demonstrating their commitment and desire to get into the workforce and want to work for a great company.
Hopefully, I mean, that's a wonderful way of looking at it, Tanya. You have a million magical moments in one of these events. And, as the ripple effect continues, hopefully we'll bring in millions more. Joshua, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was just going to say that if we think about it, those mini celebrations go well beyond what we see in that moment at that event, right? As as Ross was saying, they get on the phone and they start talking, but the whole day they go back to their families and they're talking about it, and there's more celebration, and then they talk to their friends about their experience, and there's more celebrations. So it's a wave that continues, which is lovely.
Absolutely. Joshua, this was your first refugee hiring event this summer in Moncton. What's a memorable moment that sticks out for you?
Well, like Xenia said, all of the little celebrations that you see after somebody gets a job and so forth. It really is heartwarming. One thing that really stuck out in my mind and that I think about every once in a while. We had one candidate. She came to our table, and we were talking through the different positions that we had available for her. And she came from banking background, and so you could see that she was saying to herself, I can do this, but is it really what I want to do and what I would like to do with my skill set? So anyway, a little later on, she goes to another table and she's sitting down with a bank, and they seem to be having a really great conversation. There's smiles, and I can just think of, in the back of my head, I said, that is what she needs to be doing. That is where she's at, and I really hope she gets the position.
That's interesting. So you had line of sight to another employer who was part of the event, and you saw that firsthand. That actually, I've heard that before, Joshua, from other employers, is seeing other employers, and it's almost like a competitive spur to be much more engaged with the person in front of you. And I think that's part of the design, right, Ross?
Yeah. We learn from each other. We benefit from each other. We get better at it each time we do it. And I think the experience from the candidates just, improves as a result.
Angelique, any favorite moment sticks out to you from this past summer?
Yeah, well, definitely. There's certainly a few. I had the opportunity to witness one gentleman that had attended the preparation session and was very charismatic. And you just knew that he was like, almost every employer would probably have wanted him. And I had the opportunity to witness him come into the coach's corner and say that he got a job offer. Like, I still get goosebumps thinking about that. The other thing that is very memorable too, and it's just that Greater Moncton is big enough that, you'll see someone professionally, but oftentimes you'll see that same person perhaps at night, for instance, at the grocery store, or perhaps at like a children's activity, because there's a lot going on here for families. And I had the opportunity to see one of the gentlemen that had attended the hiring event that had secured employment that night at Sobeys, for instance, with his family and, little 3-year-old in tow. And it was just such a great experience because, at the end of this is giving people opportunities to get that for oftentimes that first job. They oftentimes really need that as well to get their start in Canada. And it can just be sometimes so challenging to get your foot in the door. And I think anything that we could collectively do to make that easier on people that are coming to our community. Of course, in Canada, we absolutely need immigration, but we also need to recognize that there's a lot of barriers in securing employment. And if we in any way can work together to help remove some of those barriers, it's just really one hire at a time. It's like one story at a time. And if we can produce any types of models like this, that help get some of those individuals that first job in Canada or a better job in Canada. I think it's something that we, definitely need to experience and to continue with. So certainly seeing that kind of connection from the job fair into the community, and then seeing people get that first opportunity as well. In terms of employment. And the other thing is just the volunteers. We had so many volunteers, and that was wonderful to see too. We had community agencies that were participating, like I said, all three levels of government, but also a lot of ethnocultural associations too. We did a call out to some of those, and especially in terms of the language profiles we were looking for. And we had at least, I think, 10 to 20, probably closer to 20 volunteers that were there the day of the event, doing everything from, working at the door or supporting people in Coach's Corner. We even had a LinkedIn profile photo booth at the event too, which was a great add-on. I saw many people creating their LinkedIn profiles afterwards as a result of that, but just kind of the community all coming together. I think overall it was just a really great experience.
That's fantastic, Angelique. So these little acts of community building are very powerful in and of themselves, never mind the outcomes and the hires that we are hearing about 85% and 70% in Toronto. That is a fantastic outcome. I wish more municipalities across Canada started to look at this as a serious way to innovate community building in their own backyards. Okay, Angelique, I'm going to stick with you for this audience question. Because you touched on this about employer preparation for these events. So what kinds of screening do employers go through as part of the preparation for this event? How are they prepared to lead a team of diverse people, at the end of this event?
That's a great question. So immigration is still relatively new in New Brunswick overall. We've seen a mass kind of increase in the amount of people coming to our community, especially over the last 5 years. We saw a large increase in the amount of people coming. So I know that's something collectively people have been working hard on. Our region recently collaborated with Wes on the creation of an employer toolkit, for instance, that we've been sharing with local employers and partners. It was co-creation. But also at the same time, we do have close to full employment in our community, but also a lot of people moving here. So with the fact that we've been doing job fairs for quite a long time, we have many employers that are very eager to hire newcomers. And the fact that our community is close to full employment and there's a whole new group of talent that's coming in, many of them are very open to providing opportunities, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And a lot of the employers that actually registered for this hiring event are ones that we had in the past at our regular job fairs, and we're looking for an opportunity to obviously source some excellent talent, but also to really recognizing that those employers too will have an opportunity to learn new skills, be recognized as a promising employer in our community, and again, have kind of first access to those candidates. So the employers that did attend needed to first of all attend the session that was a preparation session put on by Jumpstart Refugee Talent, our very own Darrell and his team, as well as the team at Wes and Working New Brunswick. And they also were required to bring individuals similar to Joshua that were able to make hiring decisions on the spot, and also give feedback based on the next stage. So a lot of work went into working with these employers. They're all excellent employers in our community. And I know that many of them have asked, when is the next hiring event? But certainly a lot of work yet to be done to make sure that individuals get their foot in the door at the level that they should be, and similar things like foreign credential recognition and things like that I know is a challenge across Canada. But certainly this was one way to be able to get individuals at least their first career move in Canada, and hopefully allow them to grow within a lot of those companies too.
I have another audience question that I'm going to punt out to the two employers at the table. Start with you, Ross, and then pass it to Joshua. So how prepared are employers to absorb these newcomers with diverse skills and they're not Canadian, but into their companies?
Well, I can speak only for Starbucks, but we did give a fair bit of thought to which roles would make sense for the population we were targeting, and that we're were younger refugees, family members of refugees that are coming into Canada. And we have the most roles to fill are at our store level. So we were thoughtful about which roles that we wanted to offer and start with in terms of opening up this new sort of approach to hiring with hiring events. And I suspect other employers would be doing the same thing, giving some thought to which are the right roles to offer, and thinking through then what additional steps they can take to either reduce the barriers or increase the steps that they can take to make it a more inclusive workplace, to address the particular issues that, I mean, this is true for all candidates. We all have particular, differences that make us unique individuals, and every employer in one way or another takes steps to accommodate the differences of individuals. And it's just a further continuation of doing that in thinking through what are the particular circumstances and issues that newcomers may be bringing, both positive and negative, with their lived experience, and being inclusive in the workplace to make sure that they feel welcome and quickly integrate into becoming an employee like everybody else.
Thank you. Joshua, I mean, you ended up hiring one candidate at the Moncton event. How has that worked out for your organization?
It worked out really well. The candidate that I had hired on, she, there was a few stumbles at first, but she really, she's really taken off, and she's kind of discovered in herself that she wants, to kind of pursue this possibly as a career choice, and so forth. So, it's really great to be able to get people into the positions that they need to be in. Like Ross said, people in their places. You have to think about where somebody is going to fit in the best, and make sure that they grow from there.
Okay. So Angelique's already said that employers are asking, when's the next refugee hiring event? Joshua, I'm assuming you're going to be wanting to put your hand up to be part of that when it does happen. What would you like to see at that next event from everything you've experienced at the summer one?
I don't know if there's anything about the structure of the event that I would change, but just more, as many employers, as many candidates as possible. I would like to see them come in maybe with a little more confidence and so forth, but they already had a ton of support and so forth. So that would be the only thing that I can think of.
Okay. No pressure, Angelique, as to when the next one's going to be, because I know it requires so many moving parts to be brought together. But would you want to see anything differently the next time you do one?
That's a great question. Probably, perhaps more candidates next time, kind of growing. We wanted to start small first, as it's a pilot. And so likely bring on some more candidates this time, also more employers as well, kind of like what I heard out of Toronto as well, and just see what we could do with that. Perhaps, maybe even more preparation sessions too, because I really, Joshua is an employer here, a very important employer, and that preparation sometimes will help build confidence too. So if we could do a little bit more preparation so that people can go into those types of events, oftentimes it's their first interview in Canada with full confidence. A lot of that will come from, providing a little bit more guidance and a little bit more preparation so that they feel comfortable in those settings. Hiring events are not necessarily something that exists around the world as well, and networking as well, for instance, is not necessarily something that exists in all cultures in this type of format. So the more we could do to better prepare candidates, I think is certainly something we would want to pursue with our partners.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to that next one in the city of Moncton, Angelique.
It'll be soon.
Zenia, you said you were there at the last one in Toronto. I think it was last November. What would you like to see differently, or what are you hearing from the city other than space? We'd love more space than what you give us.
I was, sort of running along those lines, actually. Like, I remember being at that event and thinking, and my team is probably going to have a few thoughts around my thinking around this, because I know it takes so much work to even do the events that we've done so far. But in my head, I was thinking we had a relatively, I think for Toronto and the size of Toronto, a relatively small event. And I would love to see that be so much bigger. Not only candidates, but employers, to see more people coming through there and having those successful moments, those mini celebrations. That would be fantastic. But I think, more than what Toronto can do, I just want to see more of these events happening right across the country, right across the province. We know that we are dealing with, newcomers coming into our spaces in increasing numbers. And so, we have a lot more people who are going to be searching for those opportunities, and those opportunities are there to be taken, and we need to help facilitate those matches. So the more that we can do on that end, that would be fantastic.
I'm glad you brought that up, Xenia. Such an important thing about spreading this to other municipalities. And Xenia and Angelique, if you have any way to put a bug in the ear of the mayors of your respective cities to be able to do exactly that, we would welcome that reach out. Ross, from the very beginning, you've seen this thing evolve. How would you like to see this unfold in 2024?
Well, just along the lines that both Xenia and Angelique have mentioned, I think as we all get more experience, it should become easier. And the whole idea of this is to work towards scale, so both in size and in repetition. And it should get easier and more efficient as we do more and more of it together. Employers learn, the settlement agencies learn, the organizers learn, cities learn. We just get better and better, and it becomes easier and easier. So what I'd love to see is that these one-off large events, there's a real special energy to them, and they have sort of a really important purpose in sort of demonstrating how this can work. But what I would love is for employers to come out of that one day and say, I'd like to do this again, and I don't want to wait till next year. Let's start to organize maybe something smaller that we might do our own or with another one or two employers, and that there be events throughout the course of the year, because that's when we're really going to get the scale of this, that you've got settlement agencies figuring out how to do this on their own, collaborating with others for sure, but being able to manage smaller events that they can hold frequently over the course of the year and meet the needs of our candidates, of refugees, because it's not one time in the year that they're all looking for work. They're here throughout the year, and the more we can provide these types of scheduled interviews specific to employers throughout the course of the year, I think will really make a difference in terms of refugee employment.
Ross, one of the things I think personally I've grown over time to appreciate about refugees is my misconceptions of what I thought they were before I started getting exposed to who they were as people. And the media covers them with a certain bias that perpetuates that misconception. What's one thing you would like Canadian employers to know about refugee talent?
Well, it's hard to pick one. I think the more and more we do this as a company, we're recognizing that the differences that refugees bring with them in terms of their lived experience are not that much different than other differences that individuals bring into the workplace. And that if you're working from a perspective of looking for diverse talent and wanting to provide an inclusive workplace, that this isn't a big jump, that there's more perhaps fear or uncertainty than is warranted. And that on the flip side, the commitment, drive, motivation, and the diversity of their lived experience enriches the workplace. It benefits. There's high employee engagement on our behalf when we're bringing candidates into our stores with this lived experience, and the commitment and drive and motivation and difference in thought that they bring. So the upside far outweighs what might be perceived as, risk or uncertainty or, a need to do things radically different than how they do things today.
Xenia, any thoughts in terms of your own perception of refugees and what you'd like Canadians to know about them?
Absolutely. I mean, I'd say there's a couple of things that in particular that I want companies to think about. One is just to personally sit in the idea and think about for a second, what does it take for a refugee to leave a home of familiarity in language, systems, nuances, and pick up and choose Canada as their home, and the personality of a person that's required that takes that person to Canada. What the courage that they have, the ambition that they have, the talent that they have, that work ethic that they have, and that you can take that individual and bring them into your own company. Just imagine if they have the courage and the ambition and the tenacity to do all of that, to leave their homes for whatever reasons those were, and to come into a new place and want to make that their home. Just imagine if they can bring that into the workplace. So that to me is first and foremost. But I do think that, a secondary thing that companies can think about, and having worked in the space of diversity and inclusion in a corporation, while it's wonderful to see that more and more corporations are taking that as part of the, social responsibility work that they are doing, the corporate citizenship work that they are doing, many I feel are often doing it in a very cursory manner. So if you want to do meaningful, valuable, impactful D&I or diversity and inclusion work, this model is an example of how you can do just that. So don't do it just with a tick in the box. Really take the time to think about a purposeful investment that has benefits all the way around.
Wonderfully said. Joshua, anything to add to that and what you would like Canadians to know about refugees and their talent?
Yeah, absolutely. The term refugee, it shouldn't be used to describe the person. It just kind of describes where they've, how they've gotten here. They've got, so much experience, wide range of experience coming from their own homes. And yes, it is a cultural difference, but I had the girl that I had brought on, she used to teach French, for example. And, it's not very often that I have, a candidate like that come across, and that's a very valuable skill. So there's a lot of very valuable talent out there that may have refugee status. And I encourage employers to just, to bite the bullet and go in and attend one of these refugee hiring events. To kind of, get a taste for themselves. It's really great.
Yeah, and if I could just add, Darrell, to Xenia's comment about the not looking at it necessarily from a CSR perspective. I think the results that you pointed out at the top of the show speak to the efficiency of this from the employer's perspective. They're getting hires at such a high rate of the number of interviews that they're doing, that there's an actual business case for this. There's a ROI from a strictly business perspective that I think isn't understood widely by businesses. And it's really unique, I think, to this model, that you can achieve a real business return from the effort you put in.
So true, Ross. So true.
And before I go to Angelique with the, what would you want Canadians to know, Ross? I want to stick with this point. What would you say to a Canadian employer who's either on the fence about joining this or maybe just not interested, outside of the business case, which is in front of everyone for the last few years? What would you say to them?
Well, I think if there's a way for them to either talk to one of the employers that participates in the hiring event or observe it, I think getting firsthand experience and seeing it for themselves does more than the business case or the numbers or the stats. It's kind of something you kind of have to see firsthand to appreciate how well it works, and how integrated the model is, and how diverse the number of the employers are. It's not a sector. It crosses all kinds of sectors, all kinds of jobs, skill levels. It's such a diverse slate of employers at each of these hiring events that it really is possible for almost any employer to participate. They just, if they I'd encourage them to come see how it works.
Wonderful. Angelique, one thing you'd want Canadians to know about refugee talent?
It's a tough one, especially following all of these folks. I would certainly say, participate, right? These are individuals that are moving to our community, and they're looking for work. And the more opportunities that we can provide people, honestly, the better. And it's not even just necessarily the job offer that's done. It could also just be a secondary referral to another employer if their skill sets, for instance, didn't fit. But it's that, that professional network building, those job offers, but also from like the individuals, the refugees, asylum seekers, for instance, or the Ukrainians that have attended the event. These are all people that are eager to work. They're excited to work. They're, for the most part, here either by themselves or with their families, and they would just like to start their lives in Canada. And oftentimes that first job is the way for them to start their journey. And the more ways that we can support that as employers or as partners or as volunteers, I think is really just the right thing to do. And from a municipal perspective, we're closest to the residents. These are all of our residents, right? And we work on behalf of our community. So the more opportunities that we can bring people together, including employers, I mean, this is just a couple of hours of someone's time, but it can literally change a life. So that's, I think, a good message for our local employers. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot more of this upcoming event.
Community building and changing lives. Angelique, I think you've got the sound bites of this entire conversation. I want to stay with you on this question, Angelique. It's come from the audience. I haven't brought up Canadian experience, or rather lack of Canadian experience. What would you say to folks listening to this conversation about refugees attending this without Canadian experience and yet managed to get hired? What would you say to an employer that values highly that Canadian experience?
So we sometimes hear that, of course, is that Canadian experience, but it's shifting a little bit because more and more employers are now engaged in our newcomer job fairs, as well as this refugee hiring event. And so that tide is starting to shift as well. Still a lot of work to be done around foreign credential recognition, for instance. But for other sectors, certainly the employers that are in the room know that the individuals, for the most part, that are attending do not have a Canadian work experience. The individuals that are attending any of our career fairs do not necessarily have that. And so oftentimes in the room, you will see those employers that, you know what, they just are looking for good talent. And if you hire one person and that works out, and oftentimes they're hiring several people, and then it just grows from there. And that's what we've seen in our community. Still tons of work yet to be done with kind of demystifying that. But it's certainly kind of one hire at a time, one word of mouth at a time, that we're kind of seeing a lot of successes in our community. But again, still so much work to be done to kind of remove that stigma and to show that you don't necessarily need Canadian experience to do the job. The job is not different necessarily from country to country, whether it's customer service, banking, new things to learn, certainly, but everyone brings a lot of value and a lot of talent with them.
And Joshua, from the one hire you made at the Moncton hiring event, how is the lack of Canadian experience being an obstacle in terms of your hire's performance?
I don't really think there's been an obstacle. You know, she was well traveled. She had a lot of different experiences, and it all just kind of ties together. You know, what they would probably do is relate it back to their previous experiences, and they grow because of it. So I don't really see it as a challenge. I see it more of as a benefit where they have experience that they can bring a fresh new take to the table, for example.
I like that. It's not a liability, it's an asset, in fact. The global experience coming to Canada and strengthening what we have.
Absolutely.
Xenia or Ross, anything to add to that lack of Canadian experience, which I hear about from every newcomer I speak to?
Yeah, I'd say two things. One, there is a perception from some that this is sort of a zero-sum situation, that employers are providing employment to refugees at the expense of others that have Canadian experience. And that's not the case, even in, locations like Angelique's mentioned, where there's low unemployment or even full employment. There are employers are still looking for filling open roles. They can't fill, even with low unemployment, there's still roles that are vacant. And so that's helping turn the tide, that employers are becoming more and more open. They're just looking for talent. And that's opening up the doors, I think, to some extent. And the other part of it, I would say, is just look to the employers that have been part of these employer events. You've got a diverse set of well-established employers, and they're succeeding. So why can't you, as an employer, just learn from the employers that are doing this? And you'll see that this perception that Canadian experience is necessary, I think, will be dispelled right away, that there are employers that don't view it that way.
Okay. Sini, I'll give you the last word.
Oh, goodness. I think, most of it's already been said. And I think that there are, a lot of companies who still need to sort of really question, what does that mean? What does Canadian experience mean when you have to think about the particular role? And there will be roles that maybe that there is still some sense of value in terms of what that is and needed. But I think for a number of the roles, particularly with these affairs, where that's just not. And similar to what Angelique said, doing that job in other countries, it's not that different. And so there's lots more to be gained than sort of using old excuses, I think, anymore.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. The hour has flown by quickly. I want to thank you, Ross, personally, for starting this with the seed of an idea that started at Starbucks and has slowly started to roll a ball across the country. First Toronto, then Moncton. Next, I'm hoping all across Canada.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Let's do it.
So this was a Talking Point episode brought to you again by New Canadians TV. You can catch New Canadians in Canada on Omni Television, also on YouTube and their website, New Canadians TV, where you can sign up for their monthly newsletter. To get notified about upcoming episodes of Talking Point, you can follow New Canadians' social media channels on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and the Telegram messaging app. On YouTube, remember to hit the bell button to get notified of our future streams. Finally, a huge thank you to our panelists, Xenia, Angelique, Ross, and Joshua, especially Joshua for taking time from his vacation to join us, for sharing your thoughts and experiences today. And to the audience members, thank you for your participation. See you all next time.